Hello, my name is Claude Sharadi, and thank you very much for watching this video. Again, this is another episode of the Afropreneurs Without Border, where we're talking about things relating to entrepreneurship and socioeconomic mobility within the community. And I have with me, as usual, Fundi Kira Kipaya, who is a transformational coach all the way from Sydney. Hi, Fundi, how are you?
I'm good, Clyde. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Fundi. So we're still addressing the issue of socio-economic mobility, more specifically, really about economic mobility, because we think all of us agree that there is a gap between where we as Africans, whether that is in the diaspora or in the continent, where we are, compared to where we're supposed to be, especially when you look at the amount of wealth and resources that we have. But we are not able to really benefit from it for a variety of reasons, and we're not able to develop our resources sufficiently. So what are some of the things we need to start considering as we have this conversation around building economic power, socioeconomic mobility, upwards, that is?
I think the question of economic mobility has a very strong link with the word, which is power. And it's important that we break it down in its elements. Power, in general, has three tenets. This could be control or access to knowledge, control or access to wealth, control or access to security. And to have that knowledge is very important.
All right. So power is obviously the most important word here. And for anything that has power, I suppose when we're talking power, we're talking about movement, because it's the movement that, for example, for a human being, they have the power to walk. There's energy, and there's something that drives that power. So what are the key elements of that power? And then we'll go and talk about economic power, but let's just start. Let's try to understand a little bit about the whole concept of power, which is quite critical in understanding socioeconomic mobility.
Yeah. So for individuals, it's very important. It's very essential to have the knowledge of how you position yourself in relation to access to those elements I've just mentioned. And as an individual, if you don't have that knowledge, you are already disadvantaged in the run for improvement in your socioeconomic mobility. So power is important to understand, because when you acquire knowledge, you need to acquire knowledge which you have a better understanding of. For example, we've discussed this in the previous
episode.
Yes, about how socioeconomic mobility has very big links with trust and being trustworthy. So, and that's part of knowledge. You have to have the knowledge to understand yourself and have self-trust and to be able to trust others. But here today we're talking about power, and then power adds to the knowledge of power adds to your advantage to your socioeconomic mobility.
And when you look at the history of African communities, I mean, we have been through so many of these. How do you put them? How do you put it properly? Whether it's slavery, colonization, neo-colonization, or neo-colonialism, whatever the word is, they all denote lack of power somewhere. People with power came and they took over our land, and they control us, they control our resources. And to some extent, that is still all happening. Is that because we don't understand the dynamics of power, or what's going on?
Well, we might understand in a sense as literally understanding, like we are discussing here. But do we know how to implement that? Do we know how to position ourselves to be able to have those necessary security measures you have to protect yourself, and also knowledge which will help you to do a lot of innovative things to produce and to provide services which are required, and that will make you money, and money is part of wealth. So these things are not, they're understood, but they're not invested. So we don't have the foundation to compete within the global environment. And this is very, very critical.
And on knowledge, what type of knowledge do we really need in order to start building that power? Because knowledge is quite broad. I mean, there's a lot of things that we know, and I don't think knowledge is necessarily what is lacking. But I think there's some specific type of knowledge that we need. For example, I would argue that technological knowledge, as opposed to just theoretical knowledge, is actually quite important when it comes to competing on the international or global scale. What do you think?
I agree with you, but I don't think that's a starting point. That is how would you say, something which, after you have developed the foundational knowledge. So foundational knowledge is to actually understand, for example, history of political economy. And from that, you will understand even your own ancestors were involved in some sort of trade, and what did they do to advance themselves and to be able to do commerce and trade with others, and understand that, using those skills can also benefit others, and that's the way to build trust with other people, or with all your neighbors. Knowing all those things are very important. It's very, very critical.
So from the foundational knowledge, as you call it, and I suppose that goes into both, first, the awareness of you as a person, your identity, your history, and that's both on a personal and collective level. And then what other types of knowledge that you need to build, to acquire, to develop that power?
Okay, so another, which I think is very important, is how do you connect with other people? How do you build the relationship with other people? And it's talking about around how you have quick and best way to trust with other people. That is building rapport very quickly, and being reliable, and being a person of integrity, and those things which also touch values, and trust is the biggest value. So all these things require discipline of some sort, and that gives you structure to interact in the environment of economic mobility.
Okay, and then you mentioned access to wealth, which also is linked to power, because wealth is power. And if you see, America is the most powerful nation in the world, is because they have a lot of wealth, and they use some of it to build their might, their military might, which gives them, more influence on the international stage. That's on a national or global level. And people who have money in the society, they dictate to a lot of extent what is happening in the society. So talk to me a little bit about the wealth aspect, the wealth access in helping to develop power.
Well, it's necessary to understand that you have to know what you do with the wealth once you have acquired it. What do you do with it? How do you invest yourself and invest your interests using wealth? Influencing and also motivating others to join if you have a movement or anything like that. And, also investing in social environments where you give help, and some people call it giving back, but even though giving back has a connotation for it, but when you say giving back, it's like you stole something and you're giving it back. But what I'm alluding here is,
if you stole it, you gotta give it back.
So what I'm alluding is that you have to be philanthropic about that, and that in itself gets your wealth a long way, because it benefits a lot of other people as well.
But you said you have to know what to do with the wealth. But I suppose the most important question first is you have to know how to get the wealth in the first place. Because if you don't have it, if you don't know how to get it, then you wouldn't need to worry about what to do with it. Do you think we have been struggling and continue to struggle as Africans in terms of building wealth?
Yes, we are. That's an obvious question, obvious thing which we are grappling with.
And what's the reason behind it?
Yeah, so the most important thing is financial literacy, right? To understand things like understanding investment, understanding how to acquire capital, understanding how to retain wealth. All these things are important, because you can get wealth, you can have access to wealth and then lose it very quickly because your knowledge is not up to where you should be. So it all goes back to knowledge, and then it covers all the three planets. The knowledge, the access to wealth, and also, most important as well, security.
My own experience, and I suppose that can also, a lot of people can connect with that, is when you look at how we develop, when we're growing up in Africa, and then even when we get to countries like Australia and everything, you kind of feel like people believe that wealth is something that you stumble upon. So it's kind of you're lucky to be wealthy, to be rich. It's not something that you build. It's not something that you can acquire by sheer determination and work. Do you agree with that sort of sentiment?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I call it a hope model, because there's some myth in our culture which is sort of like a legacy of the past, in believing a lot in miracles and magic, and also at the same time, the external environment we live in, there's also hype. So is it hope or hype? But the most important thing is to have that awareness, a proper awareness. And hope is important. Hype has to be filtered, and also that is filtered by awareness, which is part of knowledge. So to build awareness on how other people have done certain, because you are not starting. There's people could be from another community completely. You can learn from them, and that's why things like structures like coaching, mentoring, training, educating yourself, that's part of knowledge. Yeah. And knowledge sharing is very important as well. You can acquire knowledge and then maybe become successful, and then you don't share that. If you go, everything goes. But if you create, maybe Clyde becomes wealthy, and then you create another 50 Clydes, that's a good thing.
That's good. Well, I don't mind cloning myself and 50 times, and I hope that will be useful. Perhaps some people may be pissed off because there's too many clients around. But anyway, let's talk also about you talked about security access. Why is security so important in building the power in general and on economic power specifically?
It's very important because of continuation. So once you have wealth, you want to still continue to be on upward trajectory, because wealth is not stagnant, or the environment in the economy of anything, especially nowadays, is very volatile. So you have to be where you are protected, and you can protect your wealth and then grow your wealth. That way you are now secure, because that security is very important in everything you're doing. Otherwise, if you're it's very disruptive that you've got access to knowledge and wealth and everything, and then within a very short time you lose everything and you become homeless, or you become non-resourceful as you should have been, and then you end up with regrets. So it's very important, and that's why you see places like Australia, people feel, even though they're not millionaires, but they feel secure living here, because the social structures support you to be able to access these elements which can help you to become wealthy. So security is very important. It's part and parcel of power.
Okay, security is important. The question though would be, how do you actually really build that security? Is that something that totally depends on you, or it is also depending on what the broader society provides? How do you, both as an individual as well as a community, how do we go about really ensuring that not only we have that security, but we can maintain it? And then I suppose in the African continent, that's an extremely important sort of topic, because security is an issue for entrepreneurs, for people who want to be able to do things and they don't want to go into corruption and all that sort of thing. What would be your advice in terms of that?
Well, before I give an advice, I can give a scenario that, in Africa, that's why you see a lot of people who achieve success in access to wealth and even control of wealth, go back and connect into the political sphere so that they don't get disrupted. They get protected through that. Yeah. And for security, for example, the state has organs for violence, and you see this all the time,
and by that you mean the police, the army,
police,
and security.
The army, yes, all these things are used, so for you, if you have wealth, you need protection, and in Africa, that's the only way you can acquire your security is through having connection with political systems,
and that often means you have to be kind of part of the corruption, because that's how the game is played, and is that a big problem?
Unfortunately, it's not a good thing, because that actually constricts the capacity to thrive when you access wealth, because now you're worried about losing it most of the time. So you start using measures. Some of them are not good. Yeah.
Okay, now let's go to the second part of this show and speak more about really the economic power. Is because this discussion has been mostly around the broader concept of power, which still connects to wealth. But the question now is, how do we enable people to develop confidence and power within themselves to be able to achieve entrepreneurial success, economic success? Obviously, these elements you mentioned about knowledge, is obviously important. And I would also think perhaps we can talk about, because there's sort of, I suppose, the whole notion of capital is at the center of building wealth in entrepreneurship. There's the knowledge capital, there's the social capital, and there is the financial capital. Now, as a transformational coach, you are really looking at how to enable a person to move from one state of things into another that is better economically, socially, and any other way that they may wish. How do you see the interaction of these three elements in that whole transformational journey?
Yeah, so that's what we say. So the honor is on the individual. So the individual needs to know who they are. They need to know themselves. And for me, I have a program which connects 3 C's. So there's connectivity, creativity, and continuity. So, and to break it down quickly, connectivity is about you being able to know yourself and to be in harmony with yourself. Mm-hmm. And all those things are capital for you when you are going to connect with other people, because you're going to bring standards into your relationships, including the biggest one, which is trust. But creativity is very important to generate ideas, imagination, to have that courage to go ahead and take action when you have developed your own visions and intentions and go in and set up goals to do that. That requires creativity. But on the continuity, the most important thing is about wellness. And wellness, when you go to wellness, now you need to know your lifestyle has to be in line with what sort of access you want in life, especially in the economic mobility. So wellness could be nutrition, could be movement, which is exercise, could be rest, which is very important to have idle time as an individual, and sleep, to have adequate sleep. These things keeps you healthy, and therefore you see that health has connection to wealth.
Okay, connectivity, creativity, and continuity. That's a very good way of putting this. Knowledge, really, in today's world, when we're talking knowledge as a form of capital, and specifically knowledge to create businesses and develop businesses to a point where it becomes successful, and it also assists even others. Not only it provides employment opportunities, but it also help other people to follow suit and become entrepreneur themselves. Do we have sufficient knowledge as a community, or is there, for example, in the educational system in Africa, should there be a specific, a sort of program for teaching people how to build wealth, because they don't usually teach these sort of things at school? How do we really focus on the right type of knowledge and be able to acquire it and develop it so that it helps us to make inroads in the wealth building journey?
Yeah. So that is a very good question for us to explore, because of given the context we have now. You have the world on the palm of your hand. There's knowledge in there. Probably 80 to 70% of the knowledge of the world is on your phone. So the most important skill is researching, okay, and also immersing yourself with people who are actually active in that environment of building wealth. So research is very important. If you access the right knowledge, because knowledge is general. We are talking about when we say 70% of the knowledge, but that's not filtered. That is not, like you can go and look at page 1, page 2, page 3, and then you're done. You can do it. No, you have to go into mountains of information and then learn the way to access this information, and then also being able to, through thinking processes, to analyze this information and then synthesize and package it in such a way that is now useful as a wisdom for you to use as your tool to succeed in wealth building.
And that is right, because there's actually too much knowledge, too much information, which creates a lot of noise, and you have to be able to filter all of that to get the germs that you need for your own self-development. The other thing is social capital. That is basically the combination of all types of connections, all type of relationships you have with people in the society who can assist you. And in the context of the African diaspora, having really a good network does actually help a lot. And which is why with the Afropreneurship, Afropreneur Summit, we're trying to tell people it is important, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, you got to be connected to the network. From where you're standing as a coach, is there sufficient understanding and sufficient activity from the Africans to be able really to develop the network even before you need it? Because a network is actually something that you need to build before you actually need it, so that when you need it, it's there and it helps you to get what you want. Do people really get this sufficiently, in your view?
Well, in my view, I think we've over-invested in conventional education, but when we finish or we graduate, we get a piece of paper which says we have done this for 5 years or 3 years or that, and that's it. We go back into celebratory environment. So I believe when you have acquired, for example, a degree or any training which will help you, that needs to be a continuous thing in your life as part of your personal development. And that's why I was talking about research and things like that. Because university, they cannot teach you everything there. They're just giving you access to a certain block of knowledge, but you need to go and break it down and chew it and digest it so that it becomes yours. So, and that's not enough for us. We are in this area. We're very, like, my work involves these things we're talking about here, but I can count how many brothers and sisters who are taking my training or my coaching than the general public of Australia. They're very tuned into this, you know, and they know what they need, what they want. But for us, this is something we shy away. And even if it's there, even for free, people run away from it. So
yeah, and that
encourage.
is really a problem. And we'll finish with the financial capital, because if you want to become wealthy, if you want to build wealth, you need the knowledge capital, you need the social capital, the networks. You also need financial capital. Do we have the know-how and do we have access to financial capital?
Well, we probably do. We do have the know-how, but this requires a lot more than just knowing to go to the bank or speak to the bank manager, because the bank manager will, you know, give you access to what you need to provide to the bank before the bank even think about giving you money, including the behaviors we have. We have developed habits where it's not bank friendly. You know, we are not bankable as individuals. So we need to develop habits and behaviors which are bankable, meaning when somebody looks at your balance sheet, they know you have the potential to even build more of what you've built already. Being reliable in, you know, repayments on loans and things like that. These are building a reputation for you to have a relationship with an institution like bank or financial institution.
Absolutely, and I think what you're saying is quite right, because I remember before I bought my first house, you know, in Australia. That was almost 14 years ago. I didn't quite have the whole understanding of the management of, the whole financial literacy to understand how the banks will look at how much money comes into your account, how much of it is spent, how much of it is saved, whether you pay your bills on time, and all that sort of thing. And it's only then in that process that I came to understand how that whole personal sort of credit history and the connection to the money management is actually important in making you someone that the bank can trust and give money to. And that a lot of things, a lot of people still don't understand. But then beyond that, once you acquire a property, for example, or you have a job or you build a business, how do you manage it? How do you manage money in a way that is to help you to even bring more money in? And that's something also that requires more education, doesn't it?
It does. Yes, absolutely. It does. And perhaps this is some of those things which we need to really insist, even in some of these events we're doing, to share these sentiments, especially for younger ones, because they can be reckless and not knowing that whatever recklessness they're causing is going to affect them in the future with relationship with financial institutions and even access to wealth.
Okay, well, that's a very good way to end this conversation. Right now, we pretty much out of time, and I know it's obviously an important conversation that needs to be held. There are a lot of things that needs to be unpacked, and building wealth and building economic power and achieving that upward social mobility is obviously very important for many of us who are part of a minority group. We come to Australia with a degree of disadvantage to some extent, but we still have within us the resources that are needed, as long as we know how to manage these and acquire new resources, knowledge, networking, and financial access and all that sort of thing. We can manage it to be able to build more power, both as individual and as a community. And we'll continue to have this conversation. If you're watching this, I would like to remind you to please share so that other people can have access to it. Fundi, I want to say thank you very much for, again, your contribution to this platform. And we'll continue to have more conversation on economic social mobility and the wealth building in the next few weeks. Thank you very much, Fundi. And
thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And until next time, guys, please stay connected, share our videos, comment, contact us if you also want to contribute in some ways. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.